The cowboy held her while she cried, then kissed her like she was wanted. Emily's car hummed softly as it rolled down the empty country road. The late afternoon sun was warm on her face, but it did little to chase away the heaviness in her heart. She had spent the past week navigating one disappointment after another, and every mile she drove seemed to carry more than just the weight of her suitcase. It carried the weight of loneliness, frustration, and exhaustion. She glanced at the road signs, passing small towns she had never noticed before, towns that seemed to exist quietly in the background of everyone else's busy lives. Her mind wandered to the week she had just endured. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to chase new opportunities, but everything had felt like a trap. Emails went unanswered, plans fell through, and the people she had relied on seemed distant, almost uninterested. She sighed, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter, feeling the sting of tears threatening to come. As the road stretched ahead, Emily noticed a small cafe tucked in between a field and a cluster of old buildings. A hand-painted sign swayed gently in the breeze. Rustic brew, good coffee, friendly faces. The kind of place she would have usually ignored in a busy city, but today it felt inviting. Maybe a cup of coffee, a moment of calm, could help her feel a little more grounded. She eased the car into the gravel parking lot and turned off the engine, listening to the quiet hum of the countryside. The cafe had a charm she couldn't resist. Wooden tables sat scattered on a small porch, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee and baked bread drifted through the open door. A bell rang softly as she pushed it open, announcing her entrance. Behind the counter stood a man in worn jeans and a plaid shirt, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong, tanned arms. His dark hair was slightly messy, and he wore a hat that looked like it had seen many years of sun. He smiled warmly as she approached. "Afternoon," he said, his voice calm and steady. "What can I get you?" Emily hesitated, caught off guard by the kindness in his tone. "Just a coffee," she murmured, "black, please." "Coming right up," he replied, turning and moving with the easy confidence of someone who was used to hard work. She watched him for a moment, noticing the way he moved carefully, as though every step mattered. There was a quiet dignity about him that made her chest tighten slightly, though she wasn't sure why. She took a seat at a small table near the porch, letting the sun warm her face. For a moment she simply breathed, listening to the soft rustle of leaves and the faint chatter of people in the distance. The calm was unfamiliar but comforting. Life in the city had taught her to rush, to always be on edge, but here everything seemed slower, more deliberate. It was almost as if the town itself was breathing, and for the first time in days she felt like she could breathe too. The man returned with her coffee, setting it gently in front of her. "Here you go," he said. "Made it just the way you like." Emily smiled faintly. "Thank you," she said. She noticed his eyes, warm and observant, as though he was genuinely interested in more than just taking an order. He nodded and stepped back, giving her space, but there was a kindness in the way he moved that made her feel safe, as if she had known him far longer than the few moments they had shared. Taking a sip of the coffee, Emily felt a warmth spread through her body, not just from the drink but from the moment itself. It was a small thing, but in that small cafe, it felt like a reprieve from all the disappointment and stress she had carried. She let herself relax, leaning back in the chair, watching the sunlight shift across the wooden porch. After a few minutes, the man returned with a small plate of biscuits. "On the house," he said with a gentle smile. "You look like you could use something sweet." Emily blinked, surprised. She had not expected such generosity. "Thank you," she said again, her voice softer this time. Something about his presence made it easier to breathe, easier to smile, even if only a little. They began to talk, first in small ways, comments about the weather, the town, the quiet roads, but soon their conversation deepened. Emily found herself opening up about the frustrations of the week, about how lonely it had felt to be so far from everything she knew, yet so disconnected from everyone around her. She spoke quietly, almost afraid that the words would shatter the fragile sense of calm she had found here. The man listened carefully, never interrupting. He didn't offer clichés or quick solutions. Instead, he shared small stories from his life, revealing that he too had known disappointment and hard times. He spoke of the long days on the ranch, the moments of exhaustion, and the rare but precious moments of quiet joy. There was a humility to his stories, a simplicity that made Emily feel like she was not alone in the struggles of life. As the afternoon stretched on, Emily realized that she had been holding in her emotions, trying to keep everything controlled for far too long. She felt tears sting her eyes, and without thinking, she let them fall. The man's expression softened, and without a word, he stood and walked over to her. He didn't say anything. He simply held out a hand, and Emily took it, feeling a strange but comforting sense of connection. He guided her into a gentle embrace, one that felt protective but not intrusive. She leaned into him, letting her tears flow freely for the first time in weeks. In that moment, she felt safe, understood, and seen, not just as a woman on a difficult day, but as a person with real feelings, hopes, and fears. The world outside the cafe seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them and the quiet strength of that shared moment. Emily felt a strange mix of relief and vulnerability. It was unsettling yet liberating to finally let someone witness her pain without judgment. The man's presence was steady, grounding her, giving her a sense of comfort that she hadn't known she was missing. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the porch, Emily realized that this encounter, this small, unexpected meeting, had changed something inside her. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope, a glimmer that maybe life wasn't just about disappointment and struggle. Maybe, just maybe, connections like this could happen when she least expected them. Eventually, she pulled back slightly, wiping her tears, and looked up at him. Their eyes met, and in that simple gaze there was understanding, recognition, and the faintest hint of something more. An unspoken acknowledgement that sometimes the world could surprise you in the gentlest of ways. Emily stayed at the cafe a little longer, savoring the warmth of the coffee, the soft breeze, and the presence of someone who made her feel noticed. She didn't know what the future held, or if she would see him again, but in that moment it didn't matter. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace, and it was a feeling she intended to carry with her, mile by mile, as she continued her journey. By the time she left, Emily felt lighter. She waved at the man standing at the door. His hat tipped slightly, and drove off slowly, taking in the quiet beauty of the countryside. The road stretched ahead, but the heaviness in her chest had eased just enough for her to breathe deeply and keep moving forward, carrying with her a small but meaningful reminder that kindness, understanding, and genuine human connection could appear when she least expected. Emily drove slowly out of the small town, the memory of the cafe, and the man who had made her feel unexpectedly safe lingering in her mind. She couldn't help but think about his calm presence, the way he had listened without judgment, and the gentle kindness in his actions. It was strange, almost unbelievable, how a stranger could make her feel like someone truly cared about her feelings. But in that moment, she realized that sometimes life had a quiet way of surprising people when they least expected it. The road ahead twisted gently through open fields and rolling hills. Emily let her mind wander, remembering the events that had brought her to this point. She had always been independent, proud of her ability to manage her life. But lately, the pressures of work, relationships, and the constant rush of city life had started to weigh her down. She had convinced herself that she didn't need anyone, that relying on others was a weakness, but sitting in that small cafe had challenged that belief. She thought about the man, Luke, as he had introduced himself with a simple smile. There was something about the way he had shared little pieces of his life that made her feel connected, like they were not just two strangers meeting by chance, but two people who had found a moment of understanding in a chaotic world. Emily wondered what it would be like to know someone who genuinely listened, who didn't judge, and who made her feel safe simply by being present. After a few miles, Emily decided to stop again. She pulled her car to the side of the road near a small, quiet river that reflected the late afternoon sun. She needed time to think, to process the strange mix of emotions swirling inside her. Stepping out of the car, she took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. The gentle sound of flowing water was calming, almost meditative. She walked to the edge of the riverbank, feeling the soft grass beneath her feet, and sat down, hugging her knees to her chest. Her thoughts returned to her life in the city, the constant noise, the endless demands, and the feeling that no matter how hard she tried, she was always chasing something just out of reach. She had been carrying this weight alone for so long that it felt strange to imagine someone else understanding it. And yet, Luke's quiet presence at the cafe had made that possibility seem real. For the first time in a long while, Emily allowed herself to feel hope, a fragile but promising hope that perhaps life could offer moments of genuine connection. As she sat by the river, Emily's mind wandered to the stories Luke had shared. He had spoken about the ranch, the long hours of work, and the small victories that came from tending to the land. But beyond that, he had revealed his own struggles, times when life hadn't gone as planned, moments of disappointment and heartbreak. There was honesty in his words, a lack of pretense that made Emily feel both comforted and inspired. It was rare to meet someone who could be so open, yet maintain a quiet strength at the same time. The sun began to dip lower, casting golden light across the water. Emily watched the reflection, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in months. She realized that she had been so focused on surviving day by day that she had forgotten how to truly live. The world felt overwhelming, but in these small moments, sitting by a river, sharing a fleeting connection with a stranger, she remembered what it meant to feel alive. Emily didn't notice the time passing until the first stars began to appear in the sky. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself as a gentle evening breeze swept through the trees. There was a quiet magic to the moment, a sense of peace that she wanted to hold on to, even if just for a little while longer. She thought about returning to the cafe to see Luke again, but she wasn't sure if that was possible. Maybe he had gone back to his ranch, or maybe he had other responsibilities waiting for him. Still, she felt a quiet assurance that their brief encounter had not been meaningless. It had left a mark on her heart. As darkness settled over the countryside, Emily's thoughts turned inward. She thought about her own dreams, the ones she had put aside for so long. She remembered the passions that had once driven her, the moments of joy she had felt when she pursued what she loved. For years, she had allowed fear and self-doubt to take control, convincing herself that she wasn't capable or worthy of happiness. But sitting by the river, feeling the gentle pull of the night around her, she realized that perhaps it was time to start believing in herself again. The next morning, Emily woke up in a small roadside motel, the memory of the previous day still fresh in her mind. She made herself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the sunrise over the hills. The colors of the sky were breathtaking, and she felt a sense of renewal, as if the world itself was offering her a chance to begin again. She thought about the journey ahead, not just the miles she would drive, but the personal journey she had to undertake to find peace and happiness. She decided to stop at the cafe once more, hoping for the chance to see Luke again. Her heart raced as she drove through the small town, unsure of what to expect. When she arrived, the cafe looked just as inviting as the day before. The wooden tables glistened in the morning sunlight, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. She walked inside, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. Luke was behind the counter just as she remembered him, and he looked up with a warm smile that immediately eased her nerves. "Back again?" he asked, his voice friendly and calm. Emily nodded, a shy smile forming on her lips. "Yes," she said softly. I wanted to say thank you for yesterday." He stepped closer, placing a cup of coffee in front of her. "You're welcome," he said simply. "Sometimes we all need someone to listen." They sat together at a small table, and Emily found herself sharing more than she had the day before. She spoke about her fears, her hopes, and the ways in which life had sometimes felt overwhelming. Luke listened, his expression patient and kind, never rushing or judging. He shared stories of his own experiences, moments of struggle, lessons learned, and small triumphs that had shaped who he was. With each word, Emily felt a sense of relief. It was as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, replaced by a feeling of understanding and connection. She realized that it wasn't just the coffee or the quiet town that made her feel better. It was the presence of someone who genuinely cared, who made her feel seen and valued. As the morning wore on, Emily and Luke walked outside, stepping onto the porch to enjoy the warm sunlight. They talked about the town, the surrounding countryside, and the simple pleasures of life that were easy to overlook in the city. Emily laughed for the first time in weeks, the sound light and free, and she noticed that Luke's smile mirrored her own. At one point, Emily paused, looking out at the fields stretching beyond the cafe. "I never thought I'd find a place like this," she said softly. "It feels peaceful," Luke nodded, his eyes reflecting a quiet understanding. "Sometimes we have to step away from the chaos to see what really matters," he said. "The world can be loud and overwhelming, but out here you can find a little clarity." Emily felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of calm that had been missing for so long. She realized that her journey wasn't just about moving from one place to another. It was about finding moments of connection, kindness, and understanding along the way. Luke had shown her that even small gestures, a smile, a listening ear, a shared conversation, could make a profound difference in someone's life. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Emily knew that she had found something rare and valuable. A genuine connection that didn't demand anything in return. A reminder that people could be kind, understanding, and compassionate. She felt grateful for the chance encounter at the cafe, knowing that it had sparked a journey of self-discovery and hope. Before leaving the town, Emily and Luke exchanged a quiet promise to meet again. Not because they had to, but because both of them recognized the importance of connection in a world that often seemed indifferent. As Emily drove away, she felt lighter, her heart open to the possibilities that lay ahead. She had experienced the simple, yet profound, power of someone truly listening and caring, and she knew that this moment would stay with her forever. Driving down the open road, Emily allowed herself to smile. The weight she had carried for so long had not vanished completely, but it had been softened by the kindness of a stranger and the gentle warmth of human connection. She realized that life didn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. It simply required openness, vulnerability, and the courage to accept help when it was offered. And as the town faded into the distance, Emily felt a quiet but powerful sense of hope. For the first time in a long while, she believed that life could offer moments of unexpected beauty, moments that could change the course of a day, or even a life. She carried that belief with her, mile by mile, ready to face whatever lay ahead, strengthened by the memory of a kind cowboy who had reminded her that she was not alone. Emily's days following her first visit to the cafe were filled with a strange mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. She could not stop thinking about Luke, the calm, patient cowboy whose presence had made her feel understood in a way she hadn't felt in years. She replayed every moment, every smile, and every word in her mind. But beyond the pleasant memories, she also carried a quiet tension. Part of her was afraid of hoping too much, afraid that something this meaningful could not last. By the third day, Emily found herself back at the cafe, almost as if drawn there by an invisible force. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fresh hay and blooming wildflowers from the nearby fields. She parked her car, her heart beating faster than usual. As she approached the door, she saw Luke leaning against the counter, wiping his hands on a rag. When he looked up and smiled at her, Emily felt a wave of warmth wash over her. "Good morning," he said, his voice gentle. "Back for another coffee?" Emily returned the smile, feeling a little shy. "Yes," she said softly, "and maybe a little company if that's okay." Luke chuckled lightly. "Of course, sit wherever you like." They moved to the porch again, the same wooden table where they had shared their first conversation. The sunlight fell softly on the boards and the breeze carried a hint of wild flowers and fresh earth. Emily felt more comfortable than she had in a long time, yet there was a nervous flutter in her chest she couldn't ignore. As they settled into their seats, Emily began to open up in ways she hadn't before. She spoke about her childhood, the dreams she had held, and the moments when life had made her feel small and invisible. Her voice trembled slightly, and she paused several times, fighting back the emotions that threatened to spill over. Luke listened without interrupting, his gaze steady and reassuring. "You don't have to hold it all in," he said quietly. "It's okay to let it out." Emily swallowed hard and nodded, feeling her defenses begin to crumble. She had spent so long trying to appear strong, trying to keep her emotions hidden, that it was almost uncomfortable to admit how much she had been hurting. But Luke's presence was calming, and for the first time, she felt safe letting herself be vulnerable. Tears welled in her eyes, and before she could stop them, they began to fall. She looked down at her hands, ashamed of her own weakness, but Luke did not speak or judge. Instead, he reached out and placed his hand gently on hers, offering silent support. His touch was grounding, steadying, a reminder that she did not have to face her feelings alone. "Emily," he said softly, "it's okay, you don't have to hide." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening with tears, and saw only understanding. There was no impatience, no awkwardness, no need to pretend. He simply held her gaze, allowing her to exist fully in that moment. She felt the weight of her week, her month, her life begin to lift just slightly. It was as if his calm presence was a protective shield, a quiet reassurance that she was not alone, that her feelings were valid, and that it was safe to let them out. Unable to contain herself any longer, Emily leaned into him. Luke instinctively wrapped his arms around her, holding her gently but firmly. The hug was quiet but powerful, a silent acknowledgement of her pain and her courage to reveal it. Emily let herself melt into the embrace, feeling the warmth of his body and the safety of his steady presence. She rested her head against his chest, hearing the slow, rhythmic beat of his heart. In that moment, the world outside the porch, the fields, the road, the distant town seemed to disappear. There was only this small, quiet space where she was seen, held, and accepted. Minutes passed, though it felt like an eternity. Emily's tears gradually slowed, leaving behind a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She pulled back slightly, her eyes still shimmering, and looked at Luke. He gave her a soft smile, one that conveyed reassurance without words. She noticed the subtle way he had stayed close, how his gaze remained on her with care and attention. It was a gentle, unspoken message. You are important, you are valued, and you are not alone. They sat together in silence for a while, the kind of silence that is comfortable, not awkward. Emily's breathing slowed, her mind clearing just enough to appreciate the serenity of the moment. She realized that it was rare to find someone who could sit with her pain without trying to fix it, someone who could simply be present and offer understanding. Luke's presence was steady, unwavering, and somehow it made her feel stronger than she had felt in weeks. After some time, Emily spoke again, her voice quieter, almost hesitant. I don't know why this feels so different. I've met people before, but no one has ever really listened. Not like this." Luke nodded slowly. "Most people aren't patient enough to listen," he said. "They're too busy with their own lives, their own problems. but sometimes the right person comes along at the right time, and if you let them, they can help you carry some of the weight. Emily felt a lump in her throat, touched by his words. She had spent so long feeling invisible, so long feeling like no one could understand her struggles, that hearing this simple truth made her heart ache with relief. She realized that connection, true human connection, was rare and precious. And she felt fortunate, almost unbelievably so, to have found it in such an unexpected place. The conversation drifted naturally, shifting from the heaviness of emotions to lighter, more personal topics. They spoke about the town, about the surrounding countryside, and about the small joys that often go unnoticed in everyday life. Emily laughed, the sound soft and genuine, feeling lighter than she had in days. Luke's laughter joined hers, and together, the sound created a sense of warmth and companionship that was both comforting and exhilarating. As the afternoon sunlight began to fade, Emily felt a new wave of emotion rising within her. She had shared parts of herself she had long kept hidden, and it had left her feeling raw, vulnerable, and, surprisingly, hopeful. Luke noticed the change in her expression, the lingering sadness mixed with a flicker of newfound confidence. Without a word, he reached out and took her hand again, holding it with gentle warmth. Emily's eyes met his, and in that look she saw something she had not expected: genuine care, concern, and perhaps even a quiet admiration. It was the kind of gaze that made her feel valued not just for her words or her tears, but simply for being herself. She felt a shiver run through her body, a mixture of nervousness and excitement, and realized that she was beginning to trust him in a way she hadn't trusted anyone in years. The moment felt fragile, suspended between them like a delicate thread. Emily's heart raced as she considered what she was feeling, unsure if it was right to let herself hope, to let herself feel so strongly. But Luke's steady presence, his unwavering attention, gave her courage. She leaned into him once more, not out of sadness this time, but out of a deep desire for comfort, for understanding, for connection. Luke's embrace tightened slightly, not in a way that pressured her, but in a way that conveyed support and care. Emily rested her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes and letting herself feel safe. The world outside, the road, the town, the worries seemed to fade entirely. In that small moment, surrounded by the gentle warmth of a stranger who had become a source of comfort, she allowed herself to be fully vulnerable. Minutes passed in quiet intimacy, the kind that requires no words, no explanations. Emily felt her tension slowly release, replaced by a sense of calm and reassurance she hadn't felt in a long time. Luke's presence was a grounding force, steady and unshakable, and she realized that sometimes the simplest gestures, a hand on her back, an arm around her shoulders, could mean more than words ever could. As the sun dipped lower, casting long golden rays across the porch, Emily finally pulled back slightly, brushing her hair from her face. She looked at Luke, her eyes filled with gratitude, and he returned her gaze with quiet understanding. There was a mutual acknowledgement of the moment they had shared, a recognition that human connection, trust, and compassion were powerful, transformative forces. Emily felt a new strength rising within her. She had faced her emotions, let herself cry, and allowed someone else to share the weight she had been carrying alone. And in doing so, she realized that she was not weak. Vulnerability was not weakness, it was courage. It was the first step toward healing, toward understanding herself, and toward opening her heart to possibilities she had long forgotten existed. As the evening settled around them, Emily and Luke continued to sit quietly, side by side. There was no rush, no urgency, only the gentle comfort of shared presence, the kind of intimacy that comes from genuine understanding. Emily felt lighter, stronger, and more hopeful than she had in weeks. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that life could hold moments of quiet beauty, moments where someone could see her, understand her, and make her feel safe simply by being there. And in that quiet, golden evening light, Emily realized that this moment, this hug, this shared silence, this connection, was something she would never forget. It was a turning point, a gentle reminder that even in the midst of life's challenges, kindness, understanding, and human connection could create a space where healing began. The following morning, Emily woke up with a quiet sense of anticipation. Even before she opened her eyes, she could feel the memory of yesterday's connection with Luke lingering in her chest, warm and steady. She had spent the night replaying the small moments, the way he had listened, the gentle reassurance in his voice, and the quiet comfort of his embrace. She smiled softly to herself, feeling a lightness that had been absent for weeks. After a simple breakfast at the small roadside motel, Emily prepared for the short drive back to the cafe. Her heart raced, a mixture of excitement and nervousness swirling within her. She wondered if Luke would be there, if he would remember her, if the moment they had shared yesterday could be repeated. But most of all, she hoped to see him, to speak to him again, and to feel that quiet sense of understanding that had touched her so deeply. When she arrived, the cafe looked exactly as it had before, charming, calm, and inviting. The sunlight reflected off the wooden tables and the porch, casting a warm glow across the building. She stepped inside, and there he was behind the counter, wiping his hands with the same quiet confidence and patience she had noticed the first day. "Morning," he said, looking up as soon as he saw her. His smile was calm but bright, carrying a warmth that made Emily's heart flutter. "I was hoping you'd come back." Emily smiled shyly. I did," she said softly. "I wanted to see you again." Luke nodded, his expression gentle. "Well, you're here now, that's what matters." They moved to their usual table on the porch, where the sunlight bathed the wooden boards in gold. The air was filled with the faint scent of coffee, fresh bread, and the fields beyond the town. For a few moments, neither spoke. They simply sat together, sharing the quiet comfort of each other's presence. Emily felt a familiar nervous energy in her chest, a mix of hope, curiosity, and the lingering ache of vulnerability. Emily began to speak first, softly and hesitantly. She shared more about herself, her dreams, her fears, and the moments when she had felt most alone in life. She spoke honestly, not holding back, trusting that Luke would not judge her or push her away. Luke listened carefully, his dark eyes steady and focused, never interrupting, never rushing. With each word, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by a quiet warmth and understanding. Luke finally spoke, his voice low and calm. "Emily, you don't have to hide any part of yourself with me. You don't have to pretend to be strong all the time. It's okay to feel everything." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. His words were simple, but they carried a depth of care and truth that made her feel seen in a way she had rarely experienced. She had spent so long trying to hold her emotions in, to appear in control, that the thought of someone accepting her just as she was felt almost unbelievable. She looked up at him, searching his eyes for any sign of judgment, but there was none. Only understanding, patience, and quiet admiration. A few moments of silence followed, each one heavy with unspoken emotion. Emily felt the familiar stir of nervous anticipation rise within her. She shifted slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and noticed Luke leaning in just a fraction, his presence warm and inviting. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken feelings, a delicate tension neither dared to break too quickly. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice almost a whisper. I don't know how to explain this, but being here with you, it feels different, safe, real." Luke's lips curved into a soft smile. "I feel the same way," he said quietly. "Sometimes life gives you moments like this, moments that don't need explanations, moments where you just know that someone matters and that they see you for who you really are." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She had experienced kind gestures before, but never with such depth or sincerity. And now, with Luke so close, with his gaze fixed gently on her, she felt a surge of emotion she could no longer hold back. She realized that this wasn't just comfort or friendship. It was something more, something tender, fragile, and full of promise. Without thinking too much, Emily leaned closer to him, feeling the warmth of his body and the steady strength of his presence. Luke's eyes softened and he leaned in just slightly, giving her the space to decide if she wanted to continue. The world around them, the cafe, the fields, the quiet town, faded away, leaving only the moment between them. And then, slowly, softly, Luke pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, deliberate, and full of meaning. It wasn't rushed or forceful. It was the kind of kiss that spoke without words, telling her that she was wanted, seen, and valued. Emily felt a shiver of emotion pass through her, a mixture of surprise, relief, and a deep, overwhelming warmth. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel the kiss fully. It was not just a gesture of affection, it was a message. A message that she was not alone, that she mattered, and that it was okay to let herself be seen and loved. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt completely safe in someone else's care, and it was both exhilarating and grounding. When they finally pulled back slightly, their foreheads rested against each other. Both of them were quiet for a moment, catching their breath, savoring the lingering connection. Emily felt her cheeks warm, her heart racing, and yet a calm certainty settled in her chest. She looked into Luke's eyes and saw the same emotions reflected there: care, tenderness, and a deep, quiet admiration. Emily began, her voice soft. She wasn't sure what to say, but she didn't need to. Luke gently took her hand, intertwining their fingers, and the simple touch spoke volumes. "SHH," he said gently, his thumb brushing across the back of her hand. "No need for words. You don't have to explain anything." Emily smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and happiness. She realized that this moment was more than just a kiss. It was a turning point. It was a recognition that she could be vulnerable and still feel safe, that she could open her heart and be embraced rather than judged. And in that realization, she felt a surge of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, life could offer more moments like this. They stayed close, sitting side by side on the porch, holding hands, occasionally brushing lips together in soft, lingering kisses. The world around them remained quiet, as if giving them space to explore this new, delicate connection. Emily noticed the way Luke looked at her, not with desire or impatience, but with admiration and care. Every gesture, every glance was deliberate, showing her that she was cherished and valued. As the afternoon wore on, they spoke softly about their lives, their dreams, and the simple joys they found in the world around them. Emily laughed freely, a sound that felt unburdened and genuine, while Luke shared stories from his life on the ranch. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they had known each other for far longer than a few days. Emily realized that the kiss had not changed their connection. It had deepened it, adding layers of trust, understanding, and emotional intimacy. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Emily felt a sense of completeness she had never known. She had allowed herself to be vulnerable, had shared her emotions, and had experienced genuine care and affection in return. Luke's presence had reminded her of the power of human connection, the way a kind gesture, a listening ear, or a simple kiss could heal, comfort, and inspire hope. As they finally stood to leave the porch, Emily felt a quiet certainty in her heart. She didn't know what the future held or how long this connection would last, but she knew one thing for certain. In Luke, she had found someone who saw her, who valued her, and who reminded her of the beauty of human connection. And that, she realized, was a gift more precious than words could ever describe. Emily and Luke exchanged one last lingering look, a smile passing between them that spoke of unspoken understanding and quiet promise. Emily knew that she would carry this moment with her forever, the kiss, the trust, the warmth of being wanted and seen. and that it would continue to shape her, giving her strength, courage, and hope in ways she had never imagined. Driving away that evening, Emily felt lighter than she had in years. The road stretched ahead, but for the first time, she didn't feel alone or burdened. She felt seen, valued, and hopeful, carrying with her the memory of a quiet cowboy who had held her, listened to her, and kissed her in a way that told her she was wanted, not just for a moment, but for who she truly was. The morning sun spilled golden light across the countryside, and Emily woke up with a calmness she hadn't felt in a long time. Her thoughts immediately drifted to Luke, the cowboy who had made her feel seen, understood, and cared for. She smiled softly, remembering the gentle warmth of his touch, the quiet understanding in his eyes, and the tender kiss that had spoken more than words ever could. She realized that life had given her something rare, something precious, and she intended to honor it, however small or fleeting it might be. Emily packed her things slowly, savoring the quiet of the morning. She had no schedule to rush to, no pressing demands, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to simply enjoy the moment. There was a freedom in knowing that she didn't have to prove herself to anyone, that she could just be present, honest, and open. And the memory of Luke, of the connection they had shared, made her feel grounded, as though she were not walking this path alone. As she drove to the cafe, she felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She didn't know exactly what would happen today, but she knew that she wanted to see him, to share one more morning in the quiet comfort of his presence. The small town greeted her with the same gentle charm as before, the fields stretching into the horizon, the soft rustle of leaves, and the quiet hum of life moving slowly but surely. When she arrived at the cafe, Luke was already there, setting out fresh cups and cleaning the counter. His eyes met hers the moment she stepped inside, and a smile spread across his face, warm, genuine, and comforting. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice carrying the same calm strength that had captivated her from the start. "I was hoping you'd come back today." Emily returned the smile, her heart fluttering. "I'm glad I did," she said simply. They moved to their usual table on the porch, where the sunlight played across the wooden boards. The air was filled with the familiar scent of coffee, bread, and the wide open fields beyond. Emily felt the quiet ease of being with someone who understood her, someone who had seen her sadness and still embraced her without hesitation. There was a sense of peace here, a stillness that allowed her to breathe fully and simply exist. As they sat together, the conversation flowed naturally. They spoke about the town, the quiet roads, and the simple pleasures of life that often go unnoticed in the city. Emily laughed freely, the sound light and unburdened, while Luke shared small stories from his work on the ranch, the long days, the challenges, and the little victories that made life feel meaningful. There was an ease between them, a sense that they could speak without fear of judgment, and that trust created a bond deeper than either of them had expected. Eventually, their conversation shifted to Emily's journey. She shared her thoughts about the past weeks, the moments of loneliness she had experienced, and the way she had begun to feel hope again. Luke listened, his eyes steady and attentive, offering silent reassurance with every glance. Emily realized that she had grown stronger in these few days, not just because of his support, but because she had allowed herself to feel, to open up, and to trust. "There's something important I want you to know," Luke said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "Meeting you, talking with you, seeing you, it's reminded me why the little moments matter. Life can be hard, but people make it worth living. And you, Emily, you matter, more than you realize." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that touched her deeply. For so long, she had struggled with feelings of invisibility, of being overlooked or forgotten. And now, hearing Luke speak so openly, she realized that she was not invisible. Someone truly cared, someone truly valued her. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude, relief, and quiet joy. Luke reached out, placing his hand gently over hers. "You're safe here," he said softly, "and not just for today. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be wanted for who you are." Emily's heart swelled with emotion. She had felt sadness and isolation for so long that the intensity of his care took her by surprise. She leaned closer, resting her head briefly against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his presence and the stability of his calm. In that simple gesture, she felt a profound sense of belonging, something she hadn't felt in years. They stayed like that for a while, side by side, sharing the quiet comfort of their connection. Emily realized that this was the kind of intimacy that didn't require words, the kind built on trust, understanding, and genuine care. She felt a deep gratitude for the unexpected ways life could bring people together, for the moments that reminded her of the goodness in the world. As the afternoon unfolded, they walked together along the fields behind the cafe, the golden sunlight casting long shadows across the ground. They spoke of dreams, small and large, of hopes for the future, and of the simple joys they each cherished. Emily felt lighter, freer, and more hopeful than she had in months. The burden she had carried alone felt smaller now, softened by the bond they shared. At one point, Emily paused to watch the sun dip lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She felt a quiet joy settle in her chest, a feeling of completion, of being exactly where she needed to be. Luke stepped closer and, without a word, wrapped his arm gently around her shoulders. She leaned into him, feeling safe, valued, and understood. "I never expected to feel this way," Emily whispered softly. Luke smiled, resting his head slightly against hers. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said. "But sometimes the best surprises are the ones that remind us of what we've been missing all along." Emily felt a warm tear slide down her cheek, and Luke reached up to gently brush it away. "You don't have to hold back," he said quietly. "It's okay to feel. It's okay to let it out. And it's okay to let someone care for you." For the first time in a long while, Emily allowed herself to truly believe those words. She had spent so much time being cautious, holding herself back, fearing disappointment and pain. But in Luke, she found someone who reminded her that life could be gentle, that trust could be rewarded, and that human connection could be healing. As the sky darkened and stars began to twinkle overhead, they returned to the porch of the cafe, where the soft glow of lanterns cast a warm light across the wooden boards. They sat together, side by side, letting the quiet night surround them. Emily realized that she didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. She simply needed moments like this, moments of presence, care, and understanding. Luke reached over and took her hand, holding it gently. Emily felt a surge of warmth and gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me, for listening, for everything." Luke's eyes softened. "No thanks needed," he replied. "You've allowed me to be part of your life for these moments, and that's enough. We all need someone who makes us feel seen, Emily." "You've reminded me of that too." Emily smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment settle over her. She realized that this connection, this bond they had formed, was more than just a fleeting moment. It was a reminder that life could offer unexpected joy, that even in difficult times, people could come into your life and leave a lasting impact. As the night grew quieter, Emily and Luke sat together under the stars, sharing stories, laughter, and comfortable silence. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years, a calm certainty that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, she could face them with hope, courage, and the memory of someone who truly cared. When it was finally time to part for the evening, they stood on the porch, hands still intertwined. Luke looked into her eyes with quiet warmth. "This isn't goodbye," he said softly. "It's just another beginning." Emily nodded, her heart full. "I know," she replied. "And I'm grateful for it." As she drove away that night, the stars shining above and the soft hum of the road beneath her, Emily felt lighter, stronger, and more hopeful than she had in a long time. She carried with her the memory of a quiet cowboy who had held her, listened to her, and reminded her of the power of human connection. She knew that life would continue to have challenges, but she also knew that moments like this could make all the difference, a gentle reminder that she was seen, valued, and wanted. And as the road stretched ahead, Emily allowed herself to smile, knowing that she had discovered something rare and beautiful, a connection that had changed her, strengthened her, and filled her heart with hope for the future. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she was ready to face it, carrying the warmth, trust, and love she had found in this unexpected place.